Welcome back to another FPL team selection video ahead of double game week 7. I'll be talking about how I did in game week 6 and also my transfer plans. I've made one already and I wouldn't recommend to people watching in terms of making early transfers, but I have made one and I might even take a -4 hit. Even the wild card isn't impossible for me to use in double game week 7. It all depends on the fitness of some key FPL assets. I'll get into all of that very shortly, but if you end up enjoying this video, smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this video to over 300 likes and we're going to keep on pushing towards 21,000 subscribers and beyond. That will be our aim in terms of the Tuesday deadline stream for UCL Fantasy. By that stage, we'll be looking to get to 21,000 subscribers. But without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. My goalkeepers have been a huge letdown and disappointment this season, but Onana came in clutch with a 7-pointer against Burnley. I talked about holding him in last week's transfer tips video. This week's edition has already been released on the channel, so be sure to check that out. But Onana has some good fixtures coming up, and I would expect more clean sheets for Manchester United. So I think that was very welcome, that 7-pointer. It was very crucial by the Saturday stage. I was looking really good at that point of the game week. Things changed on the Sunday, but Onana did his job and gave me a 7-pointer. Things started to go downhill in the defence. Udogie is someone I brought in last minute for Saliba. Only a 1-point difference. I'm not really too fussed about that, but Udogie got booked and conceded 2 goals in the North London derby. He is a good option in the long term, but I wouldn't be happy starting him against Liverpool at home in game week 7. And as for Chilwell, I wouldn't be happy starting him in any game week because that's back-to-back 0-pointers, being benched, coming on as a substitute and being booked. So Chilwell has been a massive disappointment after a solid start around game week 1, and I was thinking he's a really good FPL option, but in the last couple of weeks he's been benched, and despite having 2 good fixtures coming up in Fulham and Burnley away, I still think Chilwell is a sell, and I do discuss him in the transfer tips video as well. My final defender is Estupiñán, who conceded against Bournemouth but got an assist and a bonus point to salvage a 6-pointer, and Onana and Estupiñán pretty good returns. Chilwell and Udogie have let down the defence, but overall this defensive line is better compared to most game weeks. There were some massive returns in the midfield this week, starting with Bukayo Saka in the North London derby, forcing an own goal by Christian Romero and also tucking away his penalty. So a really good performance by him. There were a few mistakes here and there in his overall performance, but he has been looking back to his best self in the last week against PSV, where he was electric, and against Spurs with a solid performance, and he keeps on racking up the goals and assists every single week. His consistency is very impressive. Mbeumo has been disappointing in the last couple of game weeks. A 1 point against Everton being booked, and Everton ended up winning the game 3-1, which was a massive shock to everyone. And Brentford have been a bit shaky in the last couple of weeks. Only 1 defeat, but a lot of draws, not enough victories, and it might be a struggle for them with all the losses they've had. Rico Henry and Ben Mee due to injury, Ivan Toney because of the suspension, and also losing David Raya in the summer. But Mbeumo is still a good FPL option. As for Raheem Sterling though, I'm not so sure if I can say the same thing about him. He does face Fulham and Burnley away, and I think he'll get 1 return over the next 2 game weeks, most likely in the Burnley game. But Chelsea look disjointed. They aren't able to finish these attacks and they're not getting enough points on the board, and every single opponent looks very difficult for them. Even the next 2 I mentioned in Fulham and Burnley, there is no guarantee that Chelsea win either of those games. As for my other 2 midfielders, things look much better with Bruno Fernandes getting a 10-pointer. He produced a fantastic volley to give Man United all 3 points, and Man United also went on to win against Crystal Palace in the Carabao Cup 3-0, so things could be looking up for Manchester United as they embark on a positive fixture run over the next couple of weeks, and Bruno Fernandes got 2 bonus points to make things even better for those that stuck by him. My final midfielder was James Maddison, who produced 2 assists in the North London derby. His combination with Heung-min Son was very impressive, and he has produced returns in every single one of his away matches, but at the same time, he hasn't produced a single return in home matches, and he faces Liverpool next, and he is currently flagged, as I'll get on to very soon. But James Maddison is a very consistent option, one of the best players in FPL on their travels. His record even at Leicester was very impressive on the road, and I'm very happy with this midfield 5 overall, but there are some issues that rise to the surface with the injuries and also with some players not being good enough. There were 2 matches that cost me this week, and one of them was Man City against Nottingham Forest. Things were looking very positive. Man City were 2-0 up in a short space of time, but once Rodri got sent off, things went downhill very quickly because I did Ollie Watkins to Alvarez and the Argentine was subbed out before 60 minutes as a result of that red card, and Rodri will now miss the next 3 games, 2 in the Premier League and 1 in the Carabao Cup against Newcastle tonight. So it was a massive disappointment, and that transfer of Watkins to Alvarez has cost me 8 points. So that was a massive shame, and no forward outscored Ollie Watkins in game week 6. But I still like Alvarez long term despite his poor fixtures, but Ollie Watkins has even better ones, and you could say that was a mistake, and maybe it was, and I was chasing the points and the form of the Argentine. Haaland scores as he tends to do, and Man City were able to see out a 2-0 victory against Nottingham Forest despite being down to 10 men, and it's looking very difficult to stop Man City. They've got a very tough fixture run very soon, and let's see if they continue to look imperious. But at the moment, things aren't looking too good for my FPL team. I'm now going to show you my captain, my rank, and how things change completely, because I didn't decide to go for that Newcastle defender for a -4 hit, and I also transferred out Ollie Watkins and lost out on 8 points. Those 2 decisions cost me massively, probably a swing of around 20 points. I don't want to calculate the exact totals because otherwise I'd probably cry. But in the end, I got 61 points, a pretty poor score considering the average was very high, around 68. And there are a lot of people getting 70 plus points, even between 80 to 100. So it was absolutely awful for me as I went down 1 million in rank to 2.7. So it's been an awful start to the season. I think at this stage last year, I was in a much better place. But of course, things can change very quickly. One good game week can put me back on track, but I need that good game week to come very soon. Otherwise, I could be in massive trouble. Be sure to join the league that you can see on the right hand side, 7EG67U. There is a link in the description below. You click the link and you automatically join the league. Also check all the other links, such as becoming a channel member, patron, and joining the Discord server. There are many links there that will also be very beneficial to you. But let's get straight into this, talking about my transfer plans for double game week 7 and how I could get back on track after a very poor start. Following his impressive display against Burnley, Onana retains his spot between the sticks, and he's facing Crystal Palace, the same opponent that Man United just dismantled in the Carabao Cup. I was already expecting a 2-0 victory for Man United heading into double game week 7, and I'm more confident of that prediction following the Carabao Cup. But football is unpredictable, and let's not forget that both teams didn't play their absolute strongest sides. So this could be a completely different matchup in the Premier League. It could be a lot tighter, but I'd still give Man United the edge, and I think Onana has a good chance of a clean sheet out Old Trafford, and plenty of chances for clean sheets over the next couple of game weeks with the fixtures coming up, with the obvious exception of Man City. That's the only fixture where I could see Man United definitely conceding him. But I'm pretty happy with Onana for the time being. He's not the greatest goalkeeper option, but he's also not the worst, and there are much bigger fires to put out across the rest of my squad. I think my policy on Arsenal defenders may change from now on. Start the likes of Saliba in these away matches where Arsenal look very solid defensively, and whenever they play at the Emirates, probably just bench them because they don't keep enough clean sheets at the Emirates, and I think it's now 1 clean sheet of the last 22 appearances in the Premier League at home, which is just quite frankly not good enough. But Saliba scored in this fixture last year, a 3-0 victory for Arsenal. I wouldn't anticipate that same level of performance and also result, but I think Arsenal still have a good chance of a clean sheet and getting all 3 points, and they desperately need it. But there are a lot of injury problems at Arsenal all of a sudden. Trossard and Martinelli are both out, and there were massive blows in the North London derby. Thomas Partey is still out, and also Declan Rice is suffering from a back spasm. You've got Bukayo Saka, who's also an injury concern, and all of these absentees, coupled with Timbo's out until March, are very important to Arsenal. All 6 of them, I would say, would start for the Gunners, but the likes of Chelsea and Man United have also had similar issues throughout this season. Let's see how Arsenal deal with this amidst all these games coming up in the Carabao and the Champions League over the next week. And after Bournemouth away, it is Man City, so these Arsenal assets are dispensable. I know their fixtures long term aren't too bad, but that Man City fixture is enough, I think, to sell some of these assets. Now, I keep on making defender transfers, but Kieran Trippier has already come in, and I have sold Rico Henry, who is out for the entire season. So that transfer seemed pretty basic. The only problem with such a move is that it limits me from getting Heung-min Son or Mohamed Salah, but that's where the likes of Sven Botman or another Newcastle defender could come in, because by doing so, downgrading Chilwell to Botman or another Newcastle defender in game week 8 when Son plays Luton Town away, I can bring him in for a certain midfielder that I'm going to talk about very soon. But if I were to bring in Botman, that would be for a -4 hit, and I was prepared to do that last week. It would have been massive for my rank and at least prevented a massive red arrow. So I'm disappointed I didn't go for it in the end. I didn't expect it to be 8-0. I was predicting a 1-0 victory for Newcastle, so it goes to show what I know. But this would be a very solid defence, albeit at the expense of a -4 hit. If I decide to just stick with Trippier, it would be Purvis Estupiñán starting instead of Sven Botman. Not only do I have injuries to Rico Henry and Osola, but also in my starting 11 with the likes of Bukayo Saka, who is a doubt to face Bournemouth away, according to Mikel Arteta. He hasn't trained so far this week, so let's keep an eye out for more updates. And after Arsenal play Brentford, we should get more clarity on the situation provided by Mikel Arteta, but it's not looking good. And it would not surprise me if more wildcards were played if the likes of Bukayo Saka and James Maddison were to miss out in double game week 7. In terms of the rest of my midfield, Mbeumo is a fairly decent option, but his appeal is nowhere near as good as it was in the first 3 or 4 game weeks of this season. I brought him in for game week 4. He produced a return against Bournemouth, so not too bad. But ever since, he has been disappointing. And after the next 3 game weeks, where I think he could do very well, I'd be very happy and prepared to sell Mbeumo, especially to a West Ham midfielder. And Jarrod Bowen and Ward-Prowse look particularly appealing at this moment in time. Now, Raheem Sterling has been a massive disappointment. And after the next 2 game weeks, I'd be very happy to sell him. Even at this point against Fulham, it would not really bother me if I were to get rid of him. If I had the funds, I would do Sterling to Heung-min Son right now, even potentially for a -4 hit, despite Spurs playing Liverpool, but that is kind of a long-term move and I think it would benefit me greatly. That would be my preference, to keep Saka despite his injury concerns and sell Sterling to Son, but it's going to be impossible for me to do so without making even further transfers or playing the wild card. So Raheem Sterling is still in here. The same goes for Bruno Fernandes, who I'm quite happy to keep. I don't really trust Man United offensively despite the 3-0 victory yesterday, but I think Bruno Fernandes is a good FPL option. He'll be quite consistent. He's creating so many chances and he'll get the odd goal. He's on penalty, so there's a lot to like there. And I think Bruno Fernandes is a clear standout over Marcus Rashford despite a minimal difference in terms of points so far this season. And my final midfielder is another yellow flag player in James Maddison. Both Saka and Maddison picked up these problems in the North London derby. Let's see if we get any more clarity on the Maddison situation. I'm quite confident he'll be available for game week 7, and if not, he'll be there in time for Luton Town away in game week 8. So I'm quite happy to keep him for the time being, even on a wildcard potentially, and not lose the value I've got tied up in him. But it is a big concern to have 2 of these key players in Maddison and Saka potentially being injured. And remember, this team would be for a -4 hit, and I've still got these injury problems in my starting 11, so things aren't looking too good, and that's why I'm quite open to a number of possibilities, whether it's playing 1 free transfer, taking a -4 hit, or activating the wildcard. There is a serious debate to go about Erling Haaland on the wildcard because the fixtures for Man City between game weeks 8 to 16 are pretty awful. But remember, it is Man City and it is Erling Haaland. He could still go ballistic, especially in some of these plum fixtures in between, like Bournemouth around game week 11, and he can do well against absolutely anybody. So going without Haaland could be a risk, and it might not be one I'm prepared to take on the wildcard when I do play the chip. But he is still a great option in game week 7, probably the standout captaincy option as he tends to be, but things will change in terms of the captaincy between game weeks 8 to 16, and that's where Salah, Saka and Son would become the 3 top captaincy options in most of these game weeks. The only exception would be in game week 11 when Man City host Bournemouth. My final attacker is Julian Alvarez, and so far the transfer has turned out horrifically wrong, and Watkins could be the much better option over the next 5 to 10 game weeks. So let's see how it all goes. I'm quite happy to have Alvarez over Watkins this week, but in the long term, this move could prove futile, and it could have been one of the many mistakes I've already made this season. As stated earlier, if I bring in Botman from -4 hit, this would be my bench with Estupiñán, Udogie and Osola, and Turner would be my backup goalkeeper. So all that would be left is the captaincy, and as I've done every single week, it would be Erling Haaland, and Saka is the vice-captain. I'd also consider someone like Trippier for the vice-captaincy, but I wouldn't go so far as to captain him over Erling Haaland. Now, a lot of you may be asking, should I captain Morris over Erling Haaland? Look, it's a double game week player. He's got 2 plum fixtures. It's not too bad, but I don't trust Luton Town enough to go ahead with such a captaincy myself. And really, if it was a Heung-min Son or a Salah, it's a completely different story. But it's Morris playing for Luton Town, and I still think Erling Haaland will score once or twice at the very least. And I think Man City will win by 2 or 3 against Wolverhampton Wanderers. So I'm going for Erling Haaland as the captain, but I promise in the coming weeks, things will be different. I will be going against the Erling Haaland captaincy, and FPL could suddenly look a bit fresher and also more interesting again. But for the time being, in Double Game Week 7, I'll be captaining Erling Haaland, and hopefully that's the last time I say it in a very long time. On screen, you can see Drafthound. It's a resource I've been using all season. There is a link in the description below. I'd highly encourage you to check it out. There are so many resources to help you become a better FPL manager. And as you can see, the transfer suggestions that they provide are the same as what I'm looking to do. So Trippier and Botman in for Chilwell and Rico Henry. There's also an optimization tool which sorts out your captaincy, vice captaincy, any 50-50 calls, your bench order, and your starting 11. And of course, you don't have to follow everything the algorithm says, but it gives you a good idea of what the stats suggest that you should do, and then you can form your own opinions and make your own decisions based off the data they provide. There's also expected points, average minutes, all of these very important stats that can help you to identify the best possible transfers and team selections for your FPL teams. There's also the player rankings where you can sort things out by expected points in 1 game week, over 3 game weeks, or maybe chance of scoring, assisting, brace, anything that you can possibly think of. It is provided by Drafthound. The same goes for fixture analysis, so you can sort out teams by their chance of scoring 2+ goals, so basically their attacking data and potential, and also in terms of clean sheets and winning probabilities. And as you can see, Liverpool and Man City are always going to be right up there. Then you've got the player comparison tool, and you can put any sort of player you want. And there's also predicted lineups, and they are updated weekly. So maybe 2 weeks ago, Ramsdale would have been in here, and now it is David Raya. And you've got the expected minutes of every single one of these players and all their injury status. As you can see, Saka and Declan Rice are 2 doubts for the Bournemouth game in Double Game Week 7. So be sure to check out Drafthound. There is a link in the description below. Let's now head over to fpl.team and quickly show you some transfer plans for Game Week 8. A lot will depend on my transfers in Game Week 7. So if I bring in Sven Botman as part of a -4 hit, then it would allow me to get in Heung-min Son for Bukayo Saka in Game Week 8, and I would captain a Spurs player, either Heung-min Son or James Maddison, away to Luton. But once again, it all depends on that second transfer, because I'd be less keen on bringing in Botman as part of a -4 hit in Game Week 8 when they face West Ham away, and I'm not really expecting a clean sheet there. And the main appeal of getting Botman is the long term, but also that Burnley fixture in Game Week 7. So there's a lot to consider. I've still got some other fires to put out, like Raheem Sterling, even Mbeumo in a couple of weeks' time potentially, and Alvarez. I think he's a good option, but he might not be the best forward to partner Erling Haaland in the long term, at least for the next 5 to 10 games considering fixtures. But I don't think Alvarez is a big concern, to be fair. I just brought him in. I think my main problem with this starting 11 would be Raheem Sterling. Ideally, I'd have Heung-min Son, Maddison, Bruno Fernandes, and Bukayo Saka, especially if I go without Mohamed Salah in Game Weeks 9 and 10, which could be a massive issue for me, as he's set to be the most popular captaincy option, or at least in second place behind Erling Haaland. So that would be my plans for Game Week 8. Now let me show you a quick wildcard draft I could go towards if Bukayo Saka and James Maddison are out for Double Game Week 7. I also provided 2 drafts in my wildcard team video, one with Salah and one without, but if Saka and Maddison were to miss out, I could go for something like this. And of course, Maddison does keep his place here, but I'd be quite happy to bench him if he's only out for 1 game week against Liverpool and have him available for Luton Town away in Game Week 8. But I think the principles here are very important. So having Areola and Leno as my goalkeeper combination, their fixtures rotate very well. Having Matty Cash, Botman and Burn instead of Kieran Trippier, which isn't ideal, but it does allow me to go for Salah, Son, and all these other midfielders like Maddison, Diaby, and Ward-Prowse. Now, I would go for Bowen over Ward-Prowse if I could afford it, but I'm 0.1 million off such a move. And one big issue with this wildcard draft you see on screen is that I have Morris in there, which is fine for Double Game Week 7, but beyond this game week, I'd want to sell him, and I only have 0.7 million in the bank, so my options are quite limited, and I might have to wait 2 game weeks before having 2 free transfers, making a downgrade elsewhere, and then bringing in an Alvarez, an Ollie Watkins, or another forward like Callum Wilson in for Carlton Morris. But this is a good 50-man squad. It looks really good for Double Game Week 7, but I have to admit there are some big problems with this wildcard draft. and I would ideally have more money in the bank to move on Carlton Morris in the upcoming game weeks. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. The wildcard is a possibility, but I'm trying to save it, if possible, for game weeks 8 onwards, even maybe a bit later on in the season, whether it's game week 9 or 10, but I'm not too keen on playing the wild card just yet, if I can help it. Those injuries to Saka and Maddison, though, could be crucial and force my hand in activating the chip. And let's see if it turns out to be a disaster or a masterstroke. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's try to get this video to over 300 likes and let's keep on pushing towards 21,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, and the FPL League. There's also a link to Drafthound, which I discussed earlier. And as a patron or channel member, you get exclusive early access to my videos. You're featured on my front page of the channel as a YouTube channel member, and you also get exclusive badges and emojis to use in my live streams and videos. Thank you very much for all your support. It's massively appreciated. I'll see you very soon for more FPL and UCL fantasy content.